Right. Yeah, sorry about the motorcycles, that sort of thing. Bit of noise in the background, but there we go. It's warm and we've had to open the window. It's that time of year. So, what do we got? Morale test here. As far as the factors are concerned, I don't see any factors that adjust the morale test whatsoever. So they're testing because they're within close range of the enemy. Let's get this guy forward here so we can look at it all together. Let's see what they got. They got a morale of 5 if they roll higher than that. They've sorry being hesitant. I think this is the first morale test of the game. So it's been several weeks since I played the last game of Volley and Bayonet. So off we go. And they've rolled a 6. Oh my goodness me! They've failed their morale test. Good Lord, the French have blinked. So that means they're disordered, right? Well, heavens to Betsy, look at that. Disordered. See, of course, one of the things here is, to what extent are the Russians going to just sort of stay where they are because they're telling themselves, we're in just about a perfect situation here. Let's not mess this up. Let's not repeat, I don't know, the mistake of the Battle of Hastings, perhaps, where the Saxons abandoned their... They charged down the hill and all that sort of Senlac Hill, wasn't it? Charged down towards the Normans and so forth. But anyway, so the Russians could get frisky and think, they're disordered. Let's in with the bayonet. But I don't know. We'll see. And so now there's a very tempting target now for the artillery. Okay, so let's see what the French artillery do. All right, here we go. Oh, that's right. I remember the mistake now. Yes, I said earlier that they would get a saving throw, but I wasn't sure. They don't get a saving throw. It's unlimbered artillery in that situation would get a saving throw if fired on. And they are limbered, so they don't. Off we go. So they rolled their morale, and they're absolutely fine, as we can see. And then finally, the other French infantry. And oh my goodness me, they failed as well. Oh, there's a lot of blinking going on here in this game of chicken. Okay, so there's the situation there. Yes, 2 disordered French brigades. Let's see, from 2 different divisions. On the left, Udelay, and on the right, Desjardins. Yes, tempting targets for the Russians if they were feeling frisky and wanted to charge forth. But of course, if they did do that, yes, they could charge forward and they might be able to see them off. I mean, they might get seen off anyway if they get hit hard enough by the artillery, either one of those two. But of course, if the Russians abandon their position and move forward, then as I've said, they've got all this... I think they're all morale 6 cavalry. They're morale 7 cavalry. Are as long as there are no friends sort of in contact with, they move to sort of there. If that unit and that unit was sort of like here, they could clearly be charged by the French cavalry. So that would probably be a very foolish move for the Russians to make, just because of the short-term advantage of being able to bag a couple of French. And of course, you see, the thing is that's it. The Russians don't have to do anything to the French. All they have to do is protect themselves. Well, of course, you can protect yourself by attacking the enemy as well, potentially. But yes, right. So anyway, enough of the philosophy. Down here, now down here we have a different rule prevailing because both those units have their flanks open to enemy fire. So that is a -1 for them in the morale test. So that is a difference, because that means that even though these are morale 6, they now become a morale 5, they become a morale 4. But it means that even the Pavlov Grenadiers here could fail this morale test. So anyway, let's do the old Pavlov Grenadiers first. And no, they passed. They're fine. And then roll up for the Musketeers here. Who are they? Musketeers. Oh, it's always tough when I try to read this stuff upside down. It's like Kotsmorona or something. Apologies for that. It's because I'm trying to read it upside down. Okay, here we go. And they're fine as well. Okay, let's find out. Who were they? They are Kostroma, Brigade Kostroma of the Bagavut division. And it is Bagavut. because I think the chap was originally Swedish, if I remember correctly. But anyway, so they passed, and both the French units failed. This is terribly exciting, although the artillery didn't. Right, okay. Yes, solid stuff there. And so now we get on to the combat. And there we are. We've marked 2 hits on the Kostroma brigade, and that's actually quite significant. That's a good result for the French, because that brigade has got a total of 3 hits it can take before it's gone. So they're right now, they are, as you might call them, on their last legs. And so if a bit of a hole could be opened up there. Now, of course, behind the hole, there's a hill for one thing. It's on a hill. But behind the hole, of course, there's an entire division back here, and there's also some cavalry. So, yes, it's going to take a lot of work to punch holes in this thing. But, well, they're in position now, of course. And then, of course, on the next turn, they can become stationary, unless the Russians interfere with that. And then they'll have twice as much firepower. So, yes, we'll see. Right, so then let's continue the combat and finish it up. We've got the Russian firing here. Now, of course, it's the French player turn, but in Volley and Bayonet it's called counterattacking, which you can do if you are fired at, or you can do if you are within close range. They're within close range of the enemy, so they've chosen to concentrate their fire. And actually what they're going to do is, if they can get a result like that over there, but they're going to fire at the artillery. Artillery is not going to get any saving throws, and they're going to see if they can, that's what I'm looking for, eliminate them possibly in one go. So firing here, it's close range, they're hitting on 4, 5s and 6s. At the artillery, they can take 2 hits. So if they can get 2 hits on them, they're gone. So that would be a dramatic start for the Russian firepower. Let's see what we get. Nah. Desultory fire. No result. Okay. And here we are. It's still turn 2. This time it's the Russians. So it's 9 a.m. And we've had some decisive action. The Russian commander realized that a bit of a pickle was, a bit of a sticky wicket was developing down here, with these 2 units of French artillery down here, which of course on the next turn, the French turn, would become stationary. And if you remember, what they did was they fired at these chaps over here, the musketeers up on the hill, scored 2 hits. And the next turn, being stationary, they would be twice as powerful. They only need to get 1 more hit to eliminate that unit. And in front of them, down here, down in that region about there, were the Pavlov Grenadiers. Well, they were more sort of here-ish. And they could have fired at them as well, and potentially put them close to elimination as well. So very rapidly, the left flank, the Russian left flank of that division and the right flank of that division would be eliminated. And the problem would be, of course, that it would be a case of the French artillery firing away with impunity, with nothing firing back at them, because the Russians would be doggedly remaining in position so that they could keep their stationary status. Now, the Russian commander looked at lots of different permutations. One was to have these chaps charge the artillery here. That didn't look so good. One was to have the dragoons, or even the hussars back here, charge through the intervening infantry at the artillery. That didn't look too good. So instead, what was decided was that the Pavlov Grenadiers, which are the best Russian unit in the battle, because they have a morale of 6, but they're also shock troops, the only shock troops on the battlefield, which means that if they charge, they hit on a 5 and a 6. So that's twice as powerful as normal charging infantry would be. They have got a -1 on the morale test because they're charging unlimited artillery from the front. So there is that. Now, we've got an unusual situation because we have like a segment here of the division has come forward. And this took some very careful reading of the rules, but I think I've implemented them correctly. The thing is, the Russians have got enormous command and control problems because they don't have, they've got, is this correct to say? Yeah, they've basically got 4 divisions. That one, that one, that one, and that one. And those are a lot of men for single commanders to command, obviously. So you have a huge problem of most of the troops. Take, for example, here, who we got there? That's Bagavut. Here's old Bagavut there. Now, these chaps down here are in command because they're in command by contact. They're in command with a brigade, which is itself in command, actually by contact, which is same thing there. The command radius, remember, for this scenario is only 400 yards. So that means that although they would be within 400 yards, they're not. So they're in command by virtue of being in contact with them, and them, this sort of thing goes down the line. And the rules are that they will start, for example, the turn in command. But for them to move, they have to retain contact with the troops that made them be in command, which is to say that unit. That unit, it would be that unit. And for that unit, it would be that unit. And it says that they have to end the turn. They must end the turn in contact with that unit. It doesn't say if they don't end the turn in contact with that unit, something bad happens, like they're no longer in command or something like that. It says they just simply must retain contact with that unit. So what happened here was, this is not applying here, I was just showing you there because they're in that situation right now. So what happened here was that these 2 units here had to go with the Pavlov Grenadiers. The only way the Pavlovs could move would be if they took them with them, because these were the ones that made them be in command. So this whole section here had to break off and go forward. And that's the way I'm interpreting the rules. Right. Let's see what else has happened and the tactical nuances here. The artillery had to limber up. It couldn't unlimber. It's not horse artillery, so therefore it's hung back a little bit here, so it's not up in the front line. So anyone who charges forward is going to hit the infantry before they hit the artillery. Okay, so that's what happened there. Then the commander down here, who is Osterman Tolstoy, that's him right there. He's put himself very, very sort of mathematically calculated in the center of everything. So he's within 400 yards of these troops here, all these troops, including the skirmishers and including the cavalry back here. The cavalry have moved forward slightly, ready to get involved in this, but they are still beyond 800 yards beyond these chaps here, so that if they were forced back, they wouldn't hit them in the first half of their retreat. These chaps here have stayed exactly in place. They haven't moved. That's why they've all still got stationary. The artillery has pivoted. They don't get a free facing change, so that means it counts as movement, so that means they've lost their stationary status. The idea there was to pivot a bit more down here to be more of a continuous worry to any cavalry that might get any bright ideas about sneaking down in this direction. Also, what's his name? Kamensky there, his reserve corps, which is all these chaps here. Whoops, excuse me. Yeah, there we go. All these chaps along here. They did an oblique movement down in this direction, and so they basically sidled down here to try and get closer to the action. And again, there's a big command control problem there, of course, because there's him and there's all his men strung out like that. They've ended up on top of Klein Zausgarten. And so actually, interestingly enough, of course, we've got three different locations now that have got troops running all over them. There's Klein Zausgarten there, and over there's, of course, Zeerpalen, I think it is. And then down here we have Molwitz. Okay. And remember, because they're not skirmishers, they're just moving through. They're not occupying the village. They're just moving through it. So we sort of relocated some of the buildings a bit to facilitate that. Okay. Other than that, there's been no Russian activity. Right. Okay, so then onto the morale tests and the combat. We've already laid out the dice so we can see what's going on. Let's look at the morale test first. And one interesting thing, it's the whole sequence of events that sometimes you realize and it clicks and you think, oh, wait a minute. Because for the French here, they're in a bit of a pickle now because, of course, they move forward and these two, in their turn, they advanced to within close range of the enemy's artillery here. Then, of course, it was extraordinary because they both rolled for the morale test. They both rolled a 6, so it's 1 in 36 chance, but they did both end up disordered. And of course, the thing is that then that was followed by the Russian turn. When it's the Russian turn, the French can't try to remove their disorder. They don't get to do that until their turn. So they are presently disordered. Now, the thing is, of course, is that you can see from the white dice, they are going to have to test now in the morale test because they're within close range of the enemy. But the thing is, they're starting out disordered this time. So if they fail, it would still take a 6 for it to happen. No. Wait a minute. Disorder itself lowers their morale by 1, doesn't it? Yeah. So I believe so. I'll check that. A bit rusty. So they could roll a 5 or a 6 and fail a morale test. And if they did that, they would rout. They would become broken and they would rout. So that would be a tasty result, wouldn't it? It's, without being hit by any, without taking any hits, and without necessarily taking any hits, they could rout just through naked fear. Okay, right. Well, there we go. And then let's see. So the Russian artillery here is stationary. They get to fire again. Last turn they fired in the French turn they fired at the French artillery. Didn't get any results. I fancy they might try the same thing again there. Having spoken to the French commander, who's a good friend of mine. And then down here we've got morale tests being done because these 2 units here are being meleeed. So simple as that. If you're being meleeed, you're going to take a morale test. Pavlov Grenadiers are also going to take a morale test for the same reason. And then down here, again, this is a bit of a strained reading of the rules. But the rules state that you have to take a morale test if you're within close range of the enemy and within arc of fire. So based on that, if you look at this artillery unit there, you might say, well, they're within arc of fire of that unit, and they are within arc of fire of that unit as well. So why haven't I marked them to take a morale test? Well, the thing is that, hang on a second. I don't know if I'm going to get a lot of flack about this, and of course you can mention it in the comments, and if you see any mistakes I'm making, please make it. Please make comments. But to me, it didn't seem right. If it was only the arc of fire and you weren't looking at a clear fire lane, if it was only the arc of fire and the short range that meant that they had to take a morale test, that would mean, for example, imagine you had an infantry unit, or any unit rather, that was immediately behind them. Imagine if you had an infantry unit right there where the dice are. They would be within short range of them, and they would be within the arc of fire of them. So they would have to take a morale test, even though they are squarely in front of the enemy. I suppose you could say they were testing morale because they knew that they were getting into a dangerous position, even though they were completely blocked from the enemy by a brigade. Okay, because the arc of fire is not the same as the clear fire lane. They're defined completely separately in the rules. So you could argue, doesn't say anything about a clear fire lane. If they're within arc of fire, they should be testing. But I don't like that. So I'm not having them test, even though they're within their arc of fire. They're not testing because because of this situation here, fire lane being blocked, they could not fire upon them and they could not fire upon them. So I'd be interested to hear what anybody else might have to say about that. So there we go. And then in terms of the actual fire dice, these are not stationary, so they're firing with one fire die each. These chaps, they're in melee, so that they moved into melee. They're not stationary, so that gives them 4 dice, but they get an extra 5th one because they have dedicated guns. So that's 5 dice, and they're hitting on 5s and 6s, so we got high hopes for them. And then over here, they are able to shoot at the artillery here. Probably won't get a lot of good results because they will get saving throws. So they're able to shoot with 2 dice because they move. They're not stationary, but they get a 3rd die for the old dedicated guns. And I think that describes the whole situation. Okay, so we'll start off over here with Oudalais. Let's see, it's Amy's Infantry Brigade. Okay, so let's roll that up for them. And indeed, they are disordered, so that is a -1. So that means, on their morale factor. So that means they've got a morale of 4. They're going to lose. They're going to fail the test on a 5 or a 6. Roll that up. They're okay. All right. And then we have Desjardins division. Let's see, La Franque. Let's roll them up. Okay, same situation. Oh, and there we go. They have panicked, and indeed they have routed. Okay, let's sort that out. So the brigade of La Franque that was here is La Franque, excuse me. That's what's left of it. And they routed back down here. Remember, this is a hill. It's confusing to me. Yes, it is, but it is a hill. It's not a wood or anything. It's not a forest. Back down. Let's zoom back a bit here. There we go. That's the French are a bit disappointed in that result. But anyway, it's not the end of the world. Okay, fair enough. Soldier on. And then we got to roll for this morale test here. They are morale 5. They're not disordered, obviously. Roll them up, and they are fine. Okay. And all right, let's carry on with the morale tests then. So we've got the artillery unit, the French artillery unit there. Let's get that down here. Okay. French artillery unit there with a morale of 5, and they've failed their morale test. Okay, so they are going to become disordered, which is, there they are, disordered now. That's music to the ears of the Pavlov Grenadiers, who are facing them in melee. Let's see what the next artillery unit thinks of this whole business. They're absolutely fine, plucky chaps. Okay, and what about the Grenadiers themselves? What are they going to do? Now, they've got a -1 because they're charging artillery from the front. Unlimited artillery from the front. Yeah. And they are absolutely fine. They would have had a morale of 5. And they rolled a 4, so they're fine. And that, let's see here. That's all our morale tests done. So we can move on to combat. Right. So what do the Russians over there want to shoot at? Do they want to shoot at the artillery? Let's see, there's still, the artillery is limbered, so they don't get any saving throws. And it would be awfully nice to eliminate them. So I think they're going to continue to shoot at the artillery. So we've got 2 shots, and because it's close range, they're hitting on a 4.56. Okay. Oh, there are 2 hits there, and I'm almost certain that's going to dispatch that unit. That's going to eliminate that unit, surely. Let's look at that. And there we have it. Oudalais' divisional artillery destroyed outright. Oh, it's a messy business. Right, okay, moving on. What do we have? Let's have a bit of a tidy up over here. There we go. Right. Now, here's the all-important contest down here. Now, as I figure it, the Grenadiers can divvy up the casualties that they're going to cause between both those units. They don't all have to go on to one. On the other hand, let's see, we've already got, what do we want to do here? We've got 3 dice firing at them, but they get saving throws. So that's like, I think of it like that's the equivalent of having 1.5 dice firing at them. Got 5 dice here, but they hit on 5s and 6s because they are shock troops. So that's like having 10 ordinary dice. So I think even though their contribution is minimal because of the saving throws, because of fire, not melee. So I think I will. Can you divide the dice as you see fit? I better look that up. Okay, because I'm wondering what to do with those dice. Right, it does say they have to split their dice as evenly as possible between the 2 defending stands. Okay, well, because they're gonna see some action from over here, not much, but some. I'm going to say they're going to allocate 3 dice against them and 2 dice against them, and that seems fair to me, like a fair interpretation of the rules, I should say. Right. So, okay. So this is the complicated bit first. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to pick 3 dice, or rather the Russian commander will pick 3 dice, meleeing the unit directly in front of them. And remember, we're hitting on 5s and 6s, and there will be no saving throws. Oh, that one's... Well, no, we'll call that a 2, let's be honest. That one jumped out of the box, but it looks like a 4. So I think we've got 1 hit against them. So let's put 1 hit there. Okay. Right. And then they are... Well, that's a bit sad, isn't it? There's 1 hit on them. That's it. That's all they're going to get. 2 dice then against the other artillery unit in front of them. And they've got 1 hit there. Okay, 1 hit against them. All right. And then we've got fire coming in from here, but they're going to get saving throws because it's fire against deployed artillery. So... Yeah, okay, here we go. They're only hitting on 6s. And they've got 1 hit with that 6, but we'll roll for the saving throw for the artillery to see if they can save against it. And they did. 4, 5, 6 is a save, so that doesn't count. So after all that, look at that, 1 hit on each of them. That is disappointing, and I'm sure statistically that's... yes... I don't know. We'll press on. Right. So now the melee die coming from these chaps here is hang on a second. Yeah. Right. They're not stationary. They have 1 die. They would hit on a 4, 5, or 6, but because they are disordered, they will get a saving throw. That's the way it works. Okay. So let's roll that French die, pluck it out of there. This is against the Grenadiers. And it's a miss anyway, so there's that. Okay. And then these chaps are meleeing with the Grenadiers. They are not disordered. So a 4, 5, or a 6. And they've missed as well. Okay. There we go. Now then. So that's all of the combat over there in terms of die rolling. They took 1 hit and they took 1 hit. As we can see clearly, that means that they lost the melee. They haven't taken any hits. So they lost the melee. So they have to retreat. And actually, I'm gonna check on what artillery does, because it's not very often melee artillery in my experience. So I'll double check that. If they were infantry or cavalry, because they're right behind them, they would disorder that unit as they move through them in the first half of their retreat. Okay. Oh, they really are getting into a pickle here, aren't they? Looks like it may have been a bit of a masterstroke by the Russians. Yes, because they're close to the edge of the world down here. They've got these, but oh my gosh, this could get ugly. Okay, I'm not sure if deployed artillery defeated in melee are automatically eliminated. Okay, but I won't speculate on that. I'll look it up. This situation, though, over here is, of course, even considerably worse, because I'm pretty sure that they would rout, and I would be surprised if they just don't evaporate. So let's see what happens. All right, well, it looks like a fairly decent portion of my memory of the rules was correct. Just done a bit of reading to make sure. So let's see, what do we have? We had the artillery here, which lost its melee but was already disordered, so that meant the disorder would become a rout, and artillery doesn't rout, it gets instantly removed from the battlefield. Same thing goes for skirmishers. So they just bing, disappeared. They were so hit so hard, and there were so few of them left that this is all that remains. Okay, then the other artillery unit, which is now there, the other artillery unit, which was here, they became disordered by losing the melee, which meant a bit more of a standard situation, which means they'd have to retreat. Now, normally, actually, I don't know. Yeah, so there's a special rule if they were supported, and they had infantry immediately behind them. Being supported is a specific definition in Volley and Bayonet. So they had the infantry behind them, they were supported, in which case they conduct a normal retreat. If they weren't supported, I'm not sure what would have happened. Either they would be eliminated or they would have routed or something, I don't know. But anyway, so they did get to do a normal retreat. That means they have to move half their distance away from the enemy and directly away from the enemy, but still facing them. If they pass through friends, in the first half of that, they will disorder the friends, but the friends won't be swept away or anything. So they became disordered, and the artillery ended up there. I've been a bit generous. I've fudged things a little bit, because technically they would have ended up sort of slightly on top of this unit here, and I'm not sure how that works out. There is a thing where cavalry will block retreating forces, but I believe that only applies to infantry. So, but anyway, so that would have ended up sort of here-ish, slightly on top of that unit. So in the end, I just, rather than getting lost down a rabbit hole, I said, no, okay, look, they ended up there, which is only a few yards short of where they should have ended up. So they're there, disordered. They took their casualty, of course, from the melee, which you can see from the little white ball down there. And those are the casualty markers, remember, that I use. So they're disordered, and they're disordered. And now the last thing that can happen is that the Pavlov Grenadiers, if they choose, can advance to occupy the position that they remove the enemy from. But in this instance, I don't think they will. I think they're going to stay there and sort of stay in the company of their friends rather than sticking their necks out. So in total, though, what was the result of all of that? Well, they eliminated an artillery unit outright. They've got them 50% casualties, I think. They're disordered, and the disorder there is a problem for them, because in their turn, they don't have the right to simply recover from disorder without taking a test. They do, because they're in contact with their commander, but they are not. So they will have to take a morale test, which stands in as a disorder recovery test in this scenario. And if they fail that, they won't recover from disorder. So that's significant. And the Pavlov chaps here they've got big smiles on their faces because they've done a good hour's worth of work there, forced the French back. So what are the French going to do in retaliation? Well, of course, we've got cavalry down here now, and Now, the Russian commander took this into consideration because what we've got here, of course, is we've got an infantry brigade exposed to cavalry, which is not stationary. Now, if they're stationary, of course, like these chaps here, if they're stationary, if they were meleeed by cavalry, defensively, they would have 7 dice. Because they're not stationary, they've still got 5 dice because they have their dedicated guns with them. And the cavalry have got 4 dice. So if the cavalry charged straight at them, in terms of dice, it would be 4 against 5. But anyway, that's going ahead. And I suppose then we're pretty much at the end of the Russian turn, I would think. So we'll be moving on to French turn 3, which is 10 a.m. And here we are. It's 10 a.m., turn 3, French turn 3. And here we are at the conclusion of the French movement. We're ready for morale tests and we're ready for combat. Let's see, what was I going to tell you? Something important. Yes. Well, let's press on. Right. Oh, that's right. There were no reinforcements this turn. That's right. No reinforcements this turn, but there will be in the next turn and also in the next turn. More divisions coming on down here on the southeast edge, as did these chaps here, of course. Friant or Friant, yes. And right, so let's sweep our way down the French line as usual to see what's happened. Well, in summary, down here, absolutely nothing has happened. The French commander has decided to stay put, that the time is not yet right, but it's definitely the case that the dragoons back here, the 4 units of dragoons, 5 units of dragoons, no, there aren't, are there? No, excuse me, right. They are, yes, no, they are dragoons, that's right, they're all dragoons. And at some point, the French commander is probably going to have them run straight through the infantry up against the Russians there. Now, they will take a very hard pounding. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them were eliminated or some of them routed and this sort of thing. But the problem is, for the French commander, is he's got them and he's got to use them or lose them. I don't know they'll lose them, but if they don't employ them, then the French haven't got any hope, as far as I could see, of winning this battle by exhausting every division. So they going to have to just throw themselves up against them like some sort of sledgehammer. Do what damage they can to hopefully soften up the infantry up there on the hill, so that the French infantry can subsequently then try to attack them. And yeah, okay, we'll see what happens there. Right, let's see. These chaps here, it was determined that they were already in a good enough position, so they simply didn't move. Nor did they. Oh, they went stationary. That was a good thing there. The artillery here, unlimbered and is now firing at close range. These chaps, it was decided there was absolutely no point in charging yet, so they just stood there and went stationary. They're beyond musket range, so they're quite safe there. These chaps here, they were disordered. They managed to get rid of their disorder. They had to pass a morale test to do it, but they did that without a problem. So they've recovered from disorder. Moving down the line, let's see, let's go over here. The routed unit here couldn't rally because there's no army commander or corps commander that could have come to their aid. So they are just there. Then... let's see, I think that was the case that the corps commander, there was a corps commander that would have been able to help them, but he was busy doing other things. Who are they? They're Desjardins, and let's see, that's Augereau's corps, and Augereau is over there. Right, rather heavily engaged with duties. Right. Then let's see, we've got the key stuff was going on down here. This brigade had to recover from disorder. It had to roll for its morale test, which it was able to pass. Okay. Let's see. Then basically the exciting stuff is down here, as we can see from all the dice. where these two units, these are top flight chaps, they're morale 6, and they decided to charge, so they have indeed charged forward and are engaging the Pavlov Grenadiers, which of course is the best Russian unit on the battlefield, as I've mentioned before. They've got a morale 6, but of course they are shock troops, but that only counts when they are charging. So right now, let's see, they are basically of the same quality as the French facing them. They have an advantage in that they have their dedicated guns, so that means they've got 5 dice instead of 4, which they would other have in a non-stationary melee. The French, on the other hand, have got no dedicated guns, but they have got 2 units, so they've got 8 dice that they're using, and they've got 5 dice that they're using. Okay. Over here, the French light cavalry, which is the, La Salle Brigade, which is part of Grouchy's division. There's Grouchy down there, has followed them along here to keep them in command. They've slammed themselves into that unit of grenadiers there, because the grenadiers, it's an opportunity, and the French need to throw everything they can at an opportunity. Because, of course, the French losses don't matter in terms of the victory conditions. They could lose everything, and that wouldn't cost them the game. They have to exhaust Russian divisions. That's the key issue. So here they are. The light cavalry here have slammed into them. It's not a bad contest. They've got, because of dedicated guns, they've got 5 dice. The cavalry have got 4 dice. Okay, but I put this chap here just as a reminder to me. It's not a standard marker for me, but it's just a reminder to me that when I do the morale test, they are not cavalry secure. So they are going to get a -1 on their morale test. So the morale 6, that'll take them down to morale 5. So that means there's a 1 in 6 chance that the light cavalry will get an enormous break by them becoming disordered before the melee even begins. It was a bit sticky with that, because the other light cavalry in Grouchy's division was sent the other way. It was sent down here and then turn around and face this way. And the reason they did that was because they could have stayed up here in command of Grouchy right there, but things would have got awfully congested. They would have been right next to the edge of the table. These chaps might retreat into them, and all nasty things going on. So it was decided, send them down there. Next turn, they will be out of command. So they won't be able to make any movement, towards the enemy, if I remember correctly. But think of them as being sort of in reserve, as it were. Then also the forces of the core forces, the core troops of Davout. There's Davout there. And so the light cavalry brigade there, and also the artillery, which of course has taken a hit. They recovered from disorder as well. Everybody managed to do it. They've got 1 hit, so they're down 50%. Anyway, they basically all sort of withdrew down here to get out of the way and just sort of be handy. So there's sort of a reserve down here, if you like. Let's see. We've already talked about that lot. As far as the dice go, these are not stationary. They've just arrived, but they are firing at short range, so they'll be hitting on 4, 5, 6. These chaps, all these Russians here, now have to take morale tests because they're within close range of the enemy's guns. They have to take a morale test again, of course, because they're in the close range of those guns there. They've got 2 dice, they're stationary, so they might be able to give these chaps a bit of a pasting for sure. Let's see, what else have we got? And then, of course, there are morale tests here because anyone in melee is going to test morale. So morale, 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 morale. Okay. And I think that pretty much covers the situation. Okay. Right, so I'm going to start off over there. There we go. Start off over there with the Russians. So we've got these chaps up here. They have got they're proper grenadiers. They've got a morale of 6. So we'll roll them up. I'm pretty sure they don't have any factors. Then if they don't have any negative factors, let's let's think this through. If they don't have any negative factors, then of course it means they can't fail the morale test. Yes, because they can't roll more than 6. So they passed their test. Yes, saved a bit of time. These chaps are, those are the ones that are morale 5, aren't they? Yeah, they're morale 6. They're morale 6 as well. So looking at the situation, they can't fail. No. And then these chaps here, they are musketeers though, so they've got morale of 5. So let's roll those up and see what we get. And they have rolled a 3, so they're fine. Okay, morale tests there. Let's roll for the French. Right, they've got a morale of 5. I don't see any other factors. I'm trying to speed things up here a little. I might make a mistake, of course, but I don't want to weigh everything down by sort of going down the list of factors every time I roll a die. So as far as I can see, they've got a morale of 5. And they've passed their test. Okay. Now, yes, down here. Okay, so they are not cavalry secure. So they've got a -1. So their morale 6 becomes morale 5. So let's see if they roll a 6. And they haven't. So they pass their morale test. Now here come the light cavalry. They've got a morale of 5. And they're fine as well. Okay. Then we have these chaps here. I don't think there's any morale factors there that modify the fact that they've got a morale of 6. So they're absolutely fine. They've got a morale of 6 as well. And so I think they're fine as well. Yep. Don't see anything that modifies that. Okay. Interesting stuff there. Right. Okay, that's the morale tests. Okay, let's do some shooting down here. We've got the French artillery here. So it's field horse artillery. And they're firing at these chaps here, these grenadiers. They're hitting on 6s because they are not at close range. There are no saving throws here. And they've got 1 hit. Okay, so there's 1 hit there on the Russians. Put that there for now. Okay, oops. And then, right. And then we've got these chaps here firing, hitting on their close range. So they're hitting on 4, 5, 6. And they've got nothing. Okay, so there's just going to be 1 hit on those Russians there. All right. Then here we got short range, as we might imagine, firing at the chaps that are right in front of them. Okay. 4, 5, or 6 is a hit. There's a hit there. Okay. So there's a hit on them. All right. We'll mark that in due course. Then these chaps here, the Russians, they're at close range, so they can counterattack. They can fire in the opponent's turn. And obviously they're going to be firing at them. So 4, 5, 6 is a hit at close range. No saving throws. And nah. I got nothing. Okay, nothing there. Fine. And then we have the big bash down here. I'm going to do the Russians. I'm going to mark the Russians. Okay, so we've got our Russians marked there, each with a hit on them. And interesting thing I didn't realize really when I was doing all that was that this unit here is part of the corps of von der Ostensachen von der Ostensachen, and so is that lot. So you might look at that and think, oh, well, that's a different corps down here. But no. So those 2 hits count against von der Ostensachen's divisional exhaustion. But it's only 2, and I think the exhaustion level is 12. So it's a long way to go. But anyway, they are both on the same division effectively. So it's a start, you know. Right, so then down here, this is where the real fireworks are, of course. So I mean, let's just get to it, shall we? Okay, right. So we've got let's see. Is there any preference from the point of view of the French as to which one should? in my mind, I always think, do the biggest one first. Do the one where you have the greatest advantage first, because that might open things up, or something. I don't know. Yeah, because I don't think the French are going to follow up, even if they were the cavalry might. I don't know, but the infantry, because if the infantry, what is it? They're able to move forward and occupy the position that was occupied by but I don't think they want to do that. But anyway, right. So we'll have there's going to be no. There's going to be no saving throw, is there? No. Oh, hang on a second. I got to check something in the rules. I might have meant. No. I was going to say, oh, wait a minute. Were they attacking uphill? No, they weren't, because the front line is down here on the ground, on the level. So, yeah, we're not going to deal with that. Okay, that's not a factor. Okay, so we're just going to roll these up. Where's our box? Okay, here we go. Right. So the French are going in. And here comes this unit. Let's see. So they're going to be hitting on 6s, obviously. And there we are. Right. Nothing. Okay. Then we come to the next batch, which is the Brigade Grande, I think. Something like that. Or Grando. Excuse me. Let's try them. Right, they've got one hit. So there's one hit right now on the Pavlovs. Right, there we go. Boy, that wasn't much out of 8 dice, was it? I suppose statistically it's not outrageous. It's not. It's fairly reasonable. So let's go then with the old Pavlov Grenadiers. They're hitting on 6s because they're not charging forward. Yep, here we go. They've got one. Oh, so it's a melee tie. Let's see. Right, so he scored 1 hit. Who gets to allocate the hit? I don't know. I'm going to put that there for now, and I'm going to see if there's any rule on that. Yes. Okay, we'll have a look at that. We'll leave that sort of in limbo for the moment. Right. So then down here, we have the cavalry attacking, okay, and they're just going to be hitting on 6s, okay, and they've got 1 hit right there, okay, and then the Grenadiers fighting back, also hitting on 6s. Nothing. So they lost the melee, didn't they? They lost the melee. Right. Okay. So there's that. So let me look up what to do next. All right. So here's where we ended up. Got into a bit of a tangle with the rules, and I'm not entirely sure if I've done a few things correctly, but, well, off we go. Yeah, there's a melee tie here. I actually, the Russians caused 1 casualty in fighting these 2 units, so the hit had to be applied to somebody, and I just applied it to the unit that had the broader frontage in melee with the Russians. So that was that unit there. So they're the one who took the hit. It was a melee tie. These chaps won the melee tie, so that meant that the Pavlov Grenadiers were defeated. That means they're disordered and they have to retire or retreat. And this is where I got into the tangle, because within the first half of their retreat move, they ran into these chaps here, the Cossacks, so they disordered them and they moved through them. But the problem is that then they would have ended up on top of the Dragoons there. So I thought, well, and the Dragoons had all this lot behind them. So I thought, well, you can't take the retreating unit and just go, okay, we'll put them all the way down here, because that line could be any length, and that would mean in their turn they could retreat, 3,000 yards or something, which would be silly. So I thought, near as I could follow the rules, they would have ended up on top of them. So someone has to move. So I basically pushed everyone backwards, because that then is within the limits of it's conceivable that they would have had to shuffle backwards, shuffle backwards, shuffle backwards. I know that normally, if they were retreating and they came up against formed cavalry, they would stop. But the problem was there was nowhere for them to stop. They would have been on top of the Cossacks if they had stopped before they reached, or when they reached the dragoons. So they shoved them all back. Okay, had to shove them back too. Did the same thing. They passed through the artillery, but it wasn't within the first half of their retreat move, so they didn't disorder the artillery. Okay, they're obviously both disordered because they lost the melee, and they've both got their one casualty marked. And those chaps decided not to follow up and occupy the position that was occupied by the enemy. Cavalry didn't do that either. The cavalry are keeping a very close eye on the guns over here. These guns here, of course, in their turn can become stationary. It's a what do we got there? It is a heavy battery, a heavy battalion. Well, actually, it's what they call a positional battery in this scenario. But there we go. We're keeping away from them. That does mean now that this unit of Osterman Tolstoy's heavy artillery is stuck way out here, vulnerable. But of course, it's the Russian turns next, so the Russians can, they can just well, it's already limbered actually, isn't it? Yeah, it's limbered, so they can just relocate, get out of danger. But so definitely some mess has been caused here in the Russian configuration. So things went quite well for the French in that attack. Very well, I suppose. And let's see, I suppose that's about it, actually. And then we go on to Russian turn 3. And here we are. It's 10 a.m. for the Russians. It's the third Russian turn. And they've performed everything as far as their movement. We're ready for morale tests, and we're ready for combat. Let's see. So, of course, there was a great muddle going on down here with these two grenadier units. We're back down here, having retreated. They had to roll to see if they could recover from disorder. They were able to recover from disorder, and they spent a half a turn doing that. Then they marched smartly forward to take up a position back up in the front line. Of course, they've both taken one casualty, but they are no longer disordered. And then this unit of artillery, which was already limbered and right up the front here, moved back slightly and then unlimbered to face the enemy so that it can put the enemy in close range, requiring them to do morale tests. Let's see, Osterman Tolstoy. He just sort of scooched around to try and get himself so that he's got these troops and these troops all in command. We can see a big movement over here because this is all part of his same corps, same division as well. All this lot moved forward and slightly to their right. The key thing that they were trying to do there, and they refused to flank here with these chaps here pointing out this way now, so they've got a secure flank in terms of cavalry. Key thing that they were wanting to do was to make sure that when in the next turn, because they've heard that there are French reinforcements coming up, and they didn't want a French division to be able to appear down here. They would have to appear sort of like here-ish. It's got to be out of the firing arc of this unit here, so sort of down here-ish, and then smartly march up to here and hit them with a flank attack. Well, I've done the geometry, and they can't do that because in order to do that, they would have to march so close to these chaps that they would be entering their so-called zone of control. They can't just waltz past them right next door, so they can't do that. They can move up to here if they wanted to. They can't hit them in the flank because, as I say, this is part of a continuous formation. That's not an exposed flank there under the V&B rules. So you could say, well, why didn't this lot just move this way and close up the gap? Well, of course, that would have left a big gap down here, and they didn't want to do that. If the French if they had left a big gap down there and the French had just said, oh, we're going to go right up through that gap, Yes, they could. They would have been awfully lonely if they'd been up there, of course. Presumably they would have been charged by the cavalry or all sorts of things. But anyway, that was the theory behind all that. So they've moved forward. It's going to make things more difficult from the French if they want to do anything, come on down here and do anything down here. But we have got, of course, this big hole in the middle here. Now, the cavalry here, they could, I suppose they could in their turn, they could turn, do a free-facing change. They could march down to here, or let's say canter down to here. And then after that, there's enough room. They could charge straight through there. Well, they can't charge, of course. You can't make a facing change in the middle of your move, and then you have to do it at the beginning if you're going to charge. So, right, okay, so they couldn't do that. They could move to about here, and they'd have to stop because of zones of control. They could, of course, they could charge forward. They could charge them. These are not stationary. The Russian commander knows that. They're not stationary. They're not stationary. But they are grenadiers, which gives them, of course, advantage in the morale test is the key thing. And they do both have dedicated guns, which gives them an extra die. So there we go. Let's see. One interesting factor, of course, to keep in mind down here is that unit there and that unit there are units of musketeers, and they do not have dedicated guns. This unit of artillery stayed where it was. It's not an ideal position, but it sort of covers the gap here. And the idea was stay where you are and go stationary. So there's now a heavy unit which is stationary. These two units, which belong to Osterman Tolstoy, are indeed out of command, which is why I put these unusual markers down here. They're not my standard out of command markers. They're just ones that I had free that I wasn't doing anything else with. But that's to remind me that they were basically left behind. They could have stayed in command if they'd maintained contact with the two grenadiers units as they move forward. But the idea was that was not a good idea. So the commander would rather have them back there and out of the way, even though at the moment they're not in command, which means that they can't make a movement towards the enemy. So Osterman Tolstoy is going to want to try to sort that out as soon as possible. Not quite sure how, but it's a thought. Right. Let's see, what else? Pretty much precisely much everything else has stayed where it was. We do have, that's right, these chaps were able to restore order. They got rid of the disorder marker, and they just scooched over here a bit to get out of the way in case those chaps are forced to retire for any reason. Right, so as we can see from the dice then, we have a new situation here in that now has put these two units within close range, so they both have to take a morale test. They have to take a morale test, obviously, just like last turn because of the French guns. As they have to, so the Russian guns, they have to take tests because of the French guns, and they have to take a test because of the French guns. Okay, and then in terms of combat, usual sort of thing. They're stationary. Okay, they're not stationary. They're stationary, and they are not stationary. So it's just going to be firing. There's no melee. Yeah, and that's about it. Right. Just quick. I think I just made a mistake. I said that unit there and that unit there were musketeers. I do beg your pardon. The point is that they're Jaegers. They're Jaegers and they have no dedicated guns. Okay.